TOH Original.
Chris Lane was a relic hunter that spent most of his time looking for long-lost treasures the world had forgotten about. In the last 15 years he'd spent searching for treasures, he had been rewarded greatly with several good finds. In his travels, he had heard from citizens of a native land that there was an underground stairway on an island close by. Few people knew about it, and those who did feared it. Upon learning about the stairway, he became feverishly excited that he may have found the perfect place to search for a long-lost treasure. After asking several questions about where to find the stairway, he set off for Third Eye Island in search for forgotten relics. Upon reaching the island, he began a search for the stairway. Sure enough, after spending an hour looking for it, he finally found the stairway leading underground. Turning on his flashlight, he began walking down the stairway. After walking down the first 50 steps, he noticed that it was much darker down there than he had expected. In fact, it was so dark it seemed that the darkness had managed to make his flashlight much dimmer than usual. Continuing down the stairway, he finally reached a wooden door that was beat up and was barely hanging on its hinges. Written on the door in red graffiti were the words, "Turn back now." At this point, Chris was starting to get nervous, but his dream of finding whatever treasures were down there led him to push onwards. As he opened the door, he heard it creak loudly from its rusty hinges, and then stepped through the doorway. Once on the other side of the door, his flashlight began flickering. Although Chris was starting to get worried, he forced himself to be brave and continued walking down the stairs. Suddenly his flashlight turned off altogether, and he was left in complete darkness. It was so dark down there his eyes were burning. As he attempted to turn the flashlight back on, he heard a demonic laugh cackling from what he assumed must have been the bottom of the stairway. At the sound of the laugh, Chris became terrified and turned and began running back the way he came. While running back up the stairs, he collided painfully into a concrete wall. As he began feeling around for the door, his flashlight flickered on again. Right in front of him, where the door used to be, was a stone wall. Written in red graffiti were the words, "You should have turned back." At this point, Chris realized he had no business being here, and he was now trapped in the stairway with nowhere to go but down. Turning around, he began walking down the stairway. As he continued down, step after step, he occasionally heard the demonic laugh get closer, and he felt like millions of eyes were watching him. Finally, after walking down the stairway for several hours, he reached a concrete wall with a door on the left of the stairway and a door on the right. After examining them further, he realized he had been given an option. The door on the right said, "Sacrifice a hand to exit," while the door on the left said, "Feel free to enter." He realized his only way out was to give up a hand, but due to the fact he didn't want to lose a hand, he turned toward the door on the left and began to reach for it. As he felt around for the doorknob, he heard the demonic laugh he had heard several times in the stairway. This time, however, it was louder. It sounded as if it was directly on the other side of the door. Fearing what might be on the other side of the door, he turned back to the door on the right. In the middle of the door was a hole just big enough for him to put his hand through. Placing his hand into the hole, he waited several seconds. Suddenly a blade that was designed much like a guillotine blade shot down and cleanly cut off his hand in an instant. While screaming in pain, his hand slowly slid off his wrist. A second after his hand fell off, the door creaked open. Walking through the door, he was excited to see sunlight. Looking up, he saw that he was literally only 5 or 6 steps down from the surface. He had spent hours climbing down the staircase. How could he only be 5 steps from the surface? Turning around to look at the door he had come from, he was surprised to see that there was no door there, just a brick wall. Written on the wall in red graffiti were the words, "Your sacrifice is worthy." Walking slowly away from the stairs, he decided he would switch occupations. Searching for long-lost treasures didn't excite him anymore. He wanted a regular job.